John Davison Rockefeller was born on July 8, 1839, in the small farming town of Richford, New York, into a family that lived on the edge of poverty but was rich in lessons. His father, William Avery Rockefeller, was a traveling salesman often described as charming yet unreliable, moving from place to place and frequently involved in questionable schemes. In stark contrast, his mother, Eliza Davison Rockefeller, was a deeply religious Baptist woman who instilled in young John the values of discipline, thrift, and faith. From her, he learned the importance of saving, keeping careful accounts, and living modestly no matter the circumstances. Even as a boy, John developed an unusual seriousness about money. He tracked every penny he earned and spent, a habit that would stay with him for life. These early influences, his father's shrewdness and his mother's strict moral compass, created a unique balance in Rockefeller's character. They shaped him into someone who could be both ruthlessly strategic in business and quietly principled in his personal life, setting the stage for his extraordinary journey from a farm boy to one of the most powerful men in history. As a teenager, Rockefeller's family moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where new opportunities awaited. Although he was not considered a brilliant student, John excelled in mathematics and had a natural talent for organization and precision. At the age of 16, he enrolled in a short business course where he mastered practical skills like bookkeeping and calculating interest, knowledge that would prove invaluable later in life. Soon after, he secured his first real job as an assistant bookkeeper in a produce shipping company. For a modest wage of just 50 cents a day, young Rockefeller meticulously recorded transactions and monitored accounts with remarkable accuracy. He quickly gained a reputation for honesty, reliability, and hard work. What set him apart from other boys his age was his seriousness of purpose. While others dreamed of adventures, Rockefeller was already dreaming of building enterprises. By 1859, at just 20 years old, he saved enough money to start his first partnership in the produce business. This early leap into entrepreneurship marked the beginning of his journey from an ordinary clerk to a visionary businessman, proving that discipline, precision, and ambition could overcome humble beginnings. The year 1859 was pivotal, not only for John D. Rockefeller but for America itself. That year, Edwin Drake successfully drilled the first oil well in Pennsylvania, sparking a rush that would soon be called the nation's first great oil boom. Rockefeller, who had already established a modest produce business in Cleveland, quickly recognized that this new industry was far more promising than trading grain and meat. By 1863, he invested in his first oil refinery near Cleveland, alongside a few partners. Unlike many early oilmen who sought quick profits, Rockefeller approached the business with long-term vision, methodical planning, and relentless efficiency. He focused on reducing waste, improving processes, and producing kerosene, a cleaner, more affordable alternative to whale oil for lighting homes. Within just 2 years, his refinery became the largest in Cleveland. Rockefeller's ability to spot opportunity, combined with his disciplined approach to management, set him apart from the chaotic world of speculative oilmen. By the end of the Civil War, he was convinced that oil was not just a fleeting boom but the foundation of a modern industry, and he was determined to lead it. By 1870, John D. Rockefeller's vision for the oil industry had crystallized into something far larger than a single refinery. Recognizing the chaos of hundreds of small, inefficient refineries competing with one another, he saw an opportunity to impose order, efficiency, and stability. That year, alongside his brother William Henry Flagler and a handful of trusted partners, Rockefeller officially founded the Standard Oil Company in Cleveland. From its earliest days, Standard Oil was built on principles that reflected Rockefeller's personality, discipline, organization, and a relentless focus on efficiency. He streamlined operations, invested in the best technology, and reinvested profits to fuel growth. More importantly, he pursued a strategy of consolidation, buying out smaller refineries and integrating them under one unified system. To Rockefeller, this wasn't just about crushing competition, it was about creating a dependable, high-quality supply of oil products for a rapidly modernizing America. Within just a few years, Standard Oil became the largest refining company in the United States, setting the foundation for what would soon become the most powerful business empire in the world. Rockefeller had transformed a volatile, speculative trade into a disciplined industry, one that he controlled with precision. Once Standard Oil was firmly established, John D. Rockefeller turned his attention toward achieving complete dominance over the oil industry. He believed that stability and efficiency could only be achieved if one company controlled the market. To accomplish this, Rockefeller employed a mix of innovation, negotiation, and ruthless strategy. He secured secret deals with railroads, ensuring that Standard Oil received lower shipping rates than competitors, a move that gave him a decisive edge. Smaller refineries soon realized they couldn't compete, and many sold their businesses to Rockefeller rather than face inevitable failure. Those who resisted often found themselves undercut by Standard Oil's pricing tactics until they had no choice but to surrender. Rockefeller also mastered the art of vertical integration, controlling every stage of the business, from drilling and refining to transportation and distribution. This allowed Standard Oil to operate more efficiently than anyone else, driving down costs and improving product quality. By the early 1880s, Standard Oil controlled nearly 90% of America's oil refining capacity, an unprecedented level of dominance. To the public and press, Rockefeller was increasingly seen as a monopolist, a man who crushed competition in pursuit of total control. Yet, in his mind, he was bringing order to a chaotic industry and delivering consistent, affordable energy to a rapidly industrializing nation. This period cemented Rockefeller's reputation as both a brilliant strategist and a ruthless businessman, one who would stop at nothing to build an empire that reshaped the American economy. With Standard Oil's rapid rise came mounting criticism, as many Americans began to view John D. Rockefeller not as a genius of industry but as a symbol of unchecked corporate greed. By the late 19th century, newspapers and political leaders accused him of using ruthless tactics to build a monopoly. His secret deals with railroads, aggressive buyouts of competitors, and relentless pursuit of market dominance made him one of the most controversial figures of his era. Cartoonists in magazines like Puck and Harper's Weekly portrayed Standard Oil as an octopus with tentacles strangling Congress, railroads, and small businesses, an image that resonated with a public wary of concentrated wealth and power. Rockefeller, however, defended his methods, insisting that he had brought stability, efficiency, and lower prices to an industry that had once been chaotic and wasteful. He believed that his company's size allowed it to operate more effectively and benefit consumers, even if competitors were left behind. Yet, public sentiment was shifting, and the U.S. government could not ignore the growing outcry. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was a direct response to monopolistic practices like those of Standard Oil, and after years of legal battles, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered a historic ruling in 1911. It declared Standard Oil a monopoly in violation of antitrust laws and ordered it to be broken up into 34 independent companies, including future giants like Exxon, Chevron, and Mobil. For Rockefeller, the breakup was both a personal and professional blow, but it also revealed his unmatched foresight. He held large stakes in all the new companies, and their success only multiplied his wealth. What his critics saw as a defeat became, in reality, one of the events that solidified him as the richest man in history. Yet the controversy left an indelible mark, shaping not only Rockefeller's legacy but also America's laws and attitudes toward monopolies and corporate power. By the turn of the 20th century, John D. Rockefeller had reached a level of wealth and influence that was virtually unmatched in human history. Even after the 1911 breakup of Standard Oil, his personal fortune continued to grow, as the dozens of successor companies flourished in the rapidly expanding global oil market. Adjusted for inflation, Rockefeller's wealth is estimated at over $400 billion in today's terms, making him arguably the richest individual the world has ever seen. But his power was measured not only in dollars. Through Standard Oil and its successors, Rockefeller shaped the very infrastructure of modern industry. His influence extended into banking, railroads, and international trade, giving him an almost king-like role in America's economic life. Rockefeller's business practices also set the blueprint for modern corporate management. He perfected the use of hierarchical organization, with clear reporting structures and centralized decision-making that allowed Standard Oil to run like a well-oiled machine. He was a master of reinvestment, pouring profits back into growth and innovation, ensuring his empire's dominance even in times of uncertainty. His ability to forecast market trends and adapt to change gave him a reputation as a visionary strategist, admired even by his fiercest critics. At his peak, Rockefeller was more than just a businessman. He was a symbol of American capitalism itself, its promise, its power, and its perils. For the American public, his name became synonymous with both the heights of success and the dangers of concentrated wealth. He stood as a paradoxical figure, celebrated as a genius of industry while vilified as the embodiment of monopoly power. Yet, there was no denying that by the early 20th century, Rockefeller had transformed himself from a modest bookkeeper into one of the most influential figures in the modern economic world, a man whose reach extended far beyond oil into the very fabric of global commerce. Behind the towering empire of Standard Oil, John D. Rockefeller's personal life painted a more complex and human picture of the man. In 1864, he married Laura Celestia Spellman, a woman who shared his deep Baptist faith and belief in service, modesty, and family values. Their marriage was a partnership built on mutual respect and shared principles, and together they raised 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son, John D. Rockefeller Jr. Despite his unimaginable wealth, Rockefeller avoided the lavish excesses that many of his contemporaries embraced. He preferred a life of simplicity, discipline, and routine, a reflection of the moral values instilled in him by his mother. Friends and acquaintances often remarked on Rockefeller's strict habits. He rose early, kept meticulous schedules, and believed in maintaining order in every aspect of life. He was a man of remarkable self-control, rarely losing his temper and always weighing decisions with patience and care. His devout religious faith played a central role in shaping his worldview. He attended church regularly, taught Sunday school, and often attributed his success to God's will, seeing himself as a steward of the fortune he had been granted rather than its sole creator. Even in his interactions, Rockefeller could surprise people with his humility and generosity of spirit. Though ruthless in business, he was personally known for his politeness, measured speech, and preference for quiet living. He disliked unnecessary publicity and preferred to let his work, and later his philanthropy, speak for itself. To his children, he was both a stern disciplinarian and a doting father, teaching them the same values of thrift, hard work, and moral responsibility that had guided his own life. In many ways, Rockefeller's character stood in contrast to the empire he built. While Standard Oil represented power, dominance, and ambition, Rockefeller the man often embodied restraint, humility, and an almost obsessive pursuit of order. It was this duality, ruthless titan in business yet devout family man in private, that made him such a fascinating and often misunderstood figure in American history. As John D. Rockefeller's wealth grew to unprecedented heights, so too did his conviction that such fortune carried a moral responsibility. Guided by his Baptist faith and the principle of stewardship, Rockefeller believed that money was a tool to improve society rather than an end in itself. Over the course of his life, he gave away more than $500 million, an astonishing sum for the era, transforming the way philanthropy was understood and practiced. Unlike casual charity, Rockefeller approached giving with the same precision and strategy that he applied to business. He wanted his contributions to create lasting change, not temporary relief, and he invested in institutions that would continue to benefit society for generations. One of his most significant achievements was the founding of the University of Chicago in 1890, which quickly rose to become one of the leading centers of higher education in the United States. He also established the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, later Rockefeller University, which pioneered advancements in medicine and science, and the General Education Board, which supported schools across the country, particularly in the impoverished South. His crowning philanthropic achievement, however, was the creation of the Rockefeller Foundation in 1913, a groundbreaking institution dedicated to global health, education, and scientific research. The foundation played a pivotal role in eradicating diseases like hookworm and advancing public health initiatives worldwide. Beyond these monumental institutions, Rockefeller gave generously to countless churches, schools, and hospitals, often quietly and without seeking recognition. His philosophy of giving was rooted in the idea of a scientific philanthropy, a belief that strategic, well-planned donations could solve root problems rather than merely treat symptoms. While critics continued to view him as a monopolist who had crushed competitors, his philanthropy gradually reshaped public opinion, showing another dimension of a man determined to leave the world better than he found it. Rockefeller's vision of philanthropy set a model for future generations of wealthy individuals, from Andrew Carnegie in his own time to modern philanthropists like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. In the end, his giving was not just about writing checks, It was about building enduring institutions that carried forward his values of education, health, and progress. For Rockefeller, wealth was a responsibility, and through philanthropy, he transformed that responsibility into a legacy that continues to touch lives across the globe even today. John D. Rockefeller lived an exceptionally long life for his time, passing away on May 23, 1937, at the age of 97. By then, he had witnessed nearly a century of extraordinary transformation: the rise of American industry, the spread of railroads, the electrification of cities, and the birth of the modern corporation. His final years were spent in relative peace and comfort at his estate in Ormond Beach, Florida, and later at Pocantico Hills in New York, surrounded by family and the institutions he had built. Even in retirement, Rockefeller remained disciplined and orderly, maintaining routines of long walks, golf, gardening, and correspondence. He often handed out shiny dimes to children and visitors, a small, symbolic gesture that became one of his quirks in old age. When he died, the world reflected on the dual nature of his legacy. On one hand, Rockefeller was remembered as the man who had built a monopoly so powerful that it provoked landmark antitrust legislation and forever altered the way Americans viewed corporate power. On the other hand, he was also celebrated as a pioneer of modern philanthropy, whose visionary giving transformed education, medicine, and public health on a global scale. The companies that emerged from the 1911 breakup of Standard Oil, Exxon, Chevron, Mobil, and others, went on to dominate the oil industry for decades, continuing to shape the modern economy in ways Rockefeller himself had set in motion. More than 8 decades after his death, Rockefeller's influence remains visible everywhere: in the global oil industry, in the enduring institutions he funded, and in the philanthropic models that guide the world's wealthiest donors. His story is one of contrasts: ruthless in business yet devout in faith, frugal in lifestyle yet unmatched in generosity. He embodied both the promise and the peril of American capitalism, showing how one man's vision and discipline could transform not only an industry but also the very fabric of society. Rockefeller's life remains a testament to the power of ambition, strategy, and foresight. Whether admired as a genius of industry or criticized as the archetype of monopoly power, his impact is undeniable. He was not merely a wealthy man, he was a force who helped shape modern America. In the end, his greatest legacy was not the fortune he amassed, but the enduring institutions and ideas he left behind, ensuring that his influence would continue long after his time on Earth had ended.